If you think I'm making this up, this is how it happens. This is why we have spent trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars on infrastructure. Why do you think every time you go to a road and you see the same road with cones on it for 6 years? Would a large infrastructure bill help employment to be meaningful degree, or would it be negligible? Without getting too much into politics, can I tell you how most infrastructure bills actually work? Let me show you something real quick, and this is going to bother you. It doesn't matter. This isn't about who's in office. This is just how it works, okay? And if you can ask anybody who's a contractor, they'll probably agree in a way. Okay, how we think it works, okay? We think government approves, I can't spell today, spending. Money goes to states / corporations. Okay. Jobs are created. People work. Unemployment goes down. Infrastructure improves. That's how we think it works. Okay? That's how we think it works. Infrastructure bill, the government takes all this money, they give it out to either states or private corporations, and they in turn, spend the money, they hire people, and then they start fixing roads and bridges and shit like that. That's how we think it works. Okay? Actually works. Okay? Gov fights over numbers. You get approval. This is where bureaucracy sets in. And now you have $100 million that goes to the friend of somebody that knows a senator or helped them get elected or whatever like that, goes to their company. They then take that money and they want to make as much profit as they can. So instead of buying from American companies, they now spend that money overseas on raw materials that are cheaper, have that come in. Then they don't subsidize, they take that money, and then they go to the lowest bidder of subcontractors who then come in, do a trash job. A lot of times, they purposely spend extra time building this stuff, and so they can go back to the government and say, hey, we need more money for this, and then that money then flows out of seas, and they always take what they can for the cheapest available, whether it's materials, whether it's work, whether it's subcontractors for a subpar amount, and that money just flows out, and then you end up taking you 5 years and $100 million to build 7 miles of road. If you think I'm making this up, this is how it happens. This is why we have spent trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars on infrastructure. Why do you think every time you go to a road and you see the same road with cones on it for 6 years? Okay? Now, I'm not trying to get political here. Both parties do this. It's just how it works. It's bureaucracy. Why do you think a lot of big companies help fund senators and representatives into office? Kickbacks. This is how it happens. Okay? And, how do they get this through? It's called earmarks. And we've broke down earmarks in bills before. And so the thing is that this always happens. This always happens. And so every time there's an infrastructure bill out there, and shovel-ready jobs and all that, we never see it because this is how the money funnels down. It doesn't funnel down the way we think it will. It doesn't funnel, it doesn't do, let me do this in a picture because I think some people are misunderstanding. This is what we think happens, okay? Money goes to construction company. Construction company then hires workers who now have jobs, and those jobs in turn build our roads and bridges. Happy place, right? Government takes tax dollars, gives it to companies, states, corporations. They hire people. These people now are tax-paying citizens. They have jobs. And what are they doing with? They're building bridges. So now you have more income and you have better infrastructure. That's the way we think it works, or it should work. And that's not how it works. Because what happens is, money diverts instead of directly to the states or to the businesses that need it, to people that are lobbyists or kickbacks or whatnot, people that they know. That money then funnels overseas for raw materials. Raw materials come back. That raw material then goes to the lowest bidder for the contracts because they want to scalp as much off the top. That's why they're saving money by getting materials overseas and by hiring the cheapest people. And then it goes here and it never gets done. And then they just go back and start over again. Okay, so that's what happens a lot. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't do infrastructure bills. I'm not saying that if it was done right, it wouldn't be that. But that's how our government works. Okay, that's just how it works. Okay, and that's capitalism, where you go to a country that's communist, and then they just don't build the bridge. They don't build the bridge at all. They just take the money. The politicians approve the money and then use that money to build their own mansions. It's just one way or the other. You know what I mean? It's just how it works. Okay. Well, it doesn't work. True. But it's private entities optimizing for profit. That's the problem. If there was no way to make profit for public infrastructure, there would not be a problem. Yeah, but then you have to then get someone to do it without profit, and then you're not going to have competition. You're not going to have anybody that wants to do it. You would have to use the government to do it, which would be great in a perfect world. But anytime I think of the government running anything, I think of government housing. Government, run things. So it's all bullshit. There's no, we all think of the perfect way, the perfect, socialized way or the perfect capitalistic way. But as long as things are run by people, it's always going to be shit because people are shit. I'm talking about in the US, guys. Remember, guys, I'm not here for political things. I'm not here to tell you what's good, what's bad, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. I'm just telling you what it is. You come up with it. I'm not a political streamer, guys. Interest rates going up are good, just not now. Okay, because you don't want, unfortunately, interest rates at zero forever, because then you do get into to hyperinflation. Now, for the market, obviously, interest rates going up are bad. You need, as much as you guys are thinking about the short term, you have to remember, whether you think you're going to be alive in 20, 30 years or not, you will. And it's better to have the economy fucked now when you're young than it is when you're older. Because let me tell you something right now. There was people that were about to retire in 2001 or 2007 and everything fell out, right? It sucks. So, you want, it's almost like ripping the Band-Aid off, right? Now, being as it is, no matter what they do, once they do raise interest rates, it's going to have a negative impact, right? But the question becomes, was there enough good done in the meantime and down the road enough good to survive that pullback? Now, if they raise the rates right now, it would just all come falling down right now. Because right now we're like a stack of cards, but there's like less cards on the bottom and more cards on the top, right? And it can't happen right now with the housing market, with moratorium, with eviction freeze, with so much being propped up on this right now, stimulus checks and whatnot, and how it would be a disaster if they raised rates right now. But they're going to have to eventually raise rates, because eventually, if rates are at zero forever, you will get inflation. You will get a irreversible inflation. Okay. So they're going to have to raise it. Now, the Fed did say last year that they were eyeing 2023. We've seen some people in the Fed, some of the Fed presidents, hinting maybe a little early, like 2022 or whatnot. But it'll have to be incremental and it'll have to be slow, because it's been hyper recovery right now. And it reminds me of the Canadian housing market, where the housing market has exploded so much that in order for them to taper.
Modder_97 donated $5.
What's up, buddy?
Wouldn't raising interest rates bankrupt the federal government? I feel it's the only way to combat inflation, but then it would cause economic
depends, because it depends on how big the interest rates go, how fast they go, and who's buying. Right? Because a lot of people think that China owns all of our debt, but that's not the case. That's actually just a myth. They own maybe 10%. Most of it is owned by private individuals, corporations, and whatnot. So it would depend on the holders of the debt. The most important thing would be the credit rating, right? Like the credit, basically the credit rating of the United States when it comes to other countries, because people borrow against the value of the dollar. People trade equities in the value of the dollar. The petrodollar, oil is traded in dollars. So as long as the U.S. basically has, think of it like credit, right? Think of it like credit. What's your credit rating? Who's willing to lend you money and at what rate, right? So if you can't borrow from the Fed anymore, you could borrow from individuals, right? You could put out bonds. They have to be more attractive, but you could always, do that. You could, borrow from other entities as well. There's always people to borrow from. Now, the problem is that by raising the interest rate right now, especially with how much money the government has out before it gets a chance to even prove that money can go into GDP growth, there needs to be a rebound in the biggest factor right now is employment. They need employment. Because inflation with increased employment is fine. That is a sign of growth. Inflation with stagnant employment is stagflation. And stagflation is actually worse than inflation in a lot of cases. So, you can't have unlimited money at 0% forever, because then you cross the threshold from money for growth to money that's stagnant. And money that's stagnant is the money that goes towards inflation. Growth money is not inflation that actually hits the value of currency. It's stagflation. So, with all of that being said, you've got to focus on growth, but you can't have, like I said, you can't have 0% interest fucking being borrowed forever, because then there's no return on your investment. Therefore, the money's worthless.